Well, in the spotlights and the glare. Okay, we're at the beginning. So, good afternoon to you all. It's wonderful to be here and to give this presentation. I'll start you off with this image taken from our garden in Australia. I think it was the 30th of July, and the credit for the beautiful plants goes to my wife Janet, who's up there in the red top. She's the one with the green fingers. The wonderful thing about plants in Australia is there's colour most of the year. And in fact, probably in the summer, it's probably the quietest, but for the spring and the autumn and the winter, there's a lot of colour. This was the second month of winter, so enjoying being back after a 37-year interlude in North America and then the Royal Veterinary College. So the story I want to tell you today is a very personal one, and that is about a change I have seen in attitudes in the way the medical and veterinary professions look at each other. And it probably started 30 years ago when I was in this country. We were on sabbatic at Cambridge for a year, and I went to a meeting of the British Neuropathological Society. And it was made very clear to me, although not spoken in as many words, that any veterinary presenters there were to be tolerated but not to be encouraged, and that the medical profession was up here and the veterinary profession was some low level, and that's the way things were going to be. Well, despite that, I've always been interested in medicine and comparative medical pathology. It seems to me that as a profession we are comparative biologists. We are taught at least about 7 species, dogs, cats, all the farm animals, horses, etc. So not to want to know something about human disease and our own medical issues, to me makes no sense at all. So I made a lot of effort over my career to join medical societies, including the American Association of Neuropathologists, to learn from physicians. I did part of my PhD in a medical school. For the 7 years I was based at the Royal Veterinary College, I regularly came into Queen Square to the Institute of Neurology with cases, and they have been wonderful experiences. So 30 years ago I saw the dark side, but things have changed. I have had a number of very positive experiences. I had a friend, a medical friend in the Cornell environment, who came to the Cornell School to see neurology rounds. So this was a physician who wanted to come to the veterinary neurology rounds and see animal neurology. And he came because he could learn. And in fact, he invited me back to the hospital one weekend day to see a lad with cerebellar disease. So we'd had a horse with probably an Arab with a cerebellar disease. He said, "Do you want to come and examine this student who's got cerebellar disease?" And I said, "Oh, I'd love to." That was wonderful. So Saturday morning I went downstairs with a jacket and tie, which was not normal. And Andrew, who's sitting up there in the grey jacket, he was probably about 10 then, looked at me and said, "Where are you going, Dad?" I said, "I'm going to the hospital to examine a patient." He said, "Well, the son of the pathologist, is he dead? Why else might I be going?" Well, I was introduced to the parents simply as the Cornell expert. Nothing more was said, and it was a very informative experience. So one of the things I did at Cornell was to start a comparative pathology session, and I reached out to the pathologist at the local hospital, and we started with an exchange. So we had a semester system. So once each semester, once in the spring, once in the autumn, we would exchange cases with a local hospital. And this picture shows one of the hospital pathologists, Bill Field, sitting at a microscope in the veterinary college discussing one of the veterinary cases. So the ground rules were, we sent them 3 cases, they send us 3 cases, the doctors describe the veterinary cases, our residents describe the human cases. So that gave our veterinary pathology residents some direct exposure to the biopsies from people and to the understanding of human disease. And there he is there discussing these cases. And actually, at one of these sessions, I had a real epiphany. We'd had leishmaniasis break out in New York State. And so we gave them a series of skin samples, including one with leishmaniasis. And the physicians didn't know what it was, but more than that, they didn't know the disease was there. So this is a news article showing the report on leishmaniasis as it was found in foxhounds. It was over here in Dutchess County. And this was veterinary medicine informing medicine. And this to me was a real revelation. And I thought, why not? So from this point on, I saw the two professions as brothers, as equals, rather than what this gentleman had suggested 30 years earlier, and things have proceeded along that point. Now one sees many examples of the two professions working together. Now here's a remarkable example. The lady at the back of the image with the face masks is a physician. She's in her 4th year of anaesthesiology rounds, and she is volunteering to come to the veterinary college to spend a week working in anaesthesiology in the veterinary college to get an experience and exposure to how anaesthesia is handled in veterinary medicine. What a wonderful interchange. Here 2 surgeons work together. The person on the right is Dr. Lisa Courtier, and she's an equine veterinary surgeon, and she's very interested in arthritis in racehorses. And there she is operating with a physician from the Hospital for Special Surgery, who's also an expert in joint disease, and they are together working on protocols to establish the best way to resurface these arthritic cartilages, methodology which will be directly applicable to human disease. Recently, Cornell has set up a program to study lymphoma in the dog in collaboration with the Roswell Institute in Buffalo, New York, which is a large cancer centre. So the idea is to identify T-cell lymphomas in dogs, have those T-cell mutations identified, and then to engineer in dogs lymphocytes which will attack those tumours, and if this protocol works, it will be applied directly to human T-cell lymphomas. So the animal model, if you like, informs the human disease. The 2 oncologists work together, everybody benefits. Here are a couple of radiation oncologists from the University of California. I got this illustration from Michael Lairmore, who is the dean there, and happened to be in Melbourne about a month ago. I heard him give a talk. He showed this illustration. I wasn't aware of this particular interaction. So the gentleman behind the dog is a veterinary radiation oncologist. The gentleman in the dark sweater is a medical oncologist. And again, they are studying spontaneous neoplastic diseases in small animals with the aim of translating the information from one to the other. And finally, to bring things home to Australia, in the city of Adelaide in South Australia, there has been at the Royal Adelaide Hospital a comparative institute where physicians and veterinarians have worked together for many decades. And one of the active groups I'm aware of is in the area of brain injury. So Professor John Finney, a veterinary neuropathologist, is working with Dr. Peter Bleibergs to study the pathogenesis of brain injury, taking advantage of the fact that many animals, many farm animals are euthanized in the slaughterhouse by captive bolt, and that's a controlled brain injury. So they take the tissues from these cases and they study the nature of the injury, its consequences, measure it in all sorts of parameters, and have published a huge biography together studying this particular model of brain injury. So in conclusion, I'm very happy to say that from a rather dark moment 30 years ago where the 2 professions are viewed as never the 2 shall meet, I now see around me, around where I work and around the globe, many, many examples of the 2 professions collaborating together, working together, sharing from each other, seeing each other as equals, and all I can say is long may it last. Thank you.